You're listening to the 148th edition of the Bitachon podcast, and we continue in pasukim that were collated by Reb Zundel of Salant. This is another passuk in Tehillim. It's in chapter 37, verse 3. Bitach b'Hashem v'asei tov. Trust in Hashem and do good. Shchon eretz u're'eh emunah. Dwell in the land and be a shepherd of faith. The pasukim before, it's important to point out, before we get into this pasuk, before we see the Meforshim, this is the third pasuk of the chapter. The first pasuk says, Al tischa b'mereim. Don't enter into a competition with those who are evil. Don't look at those who seem to be successful despite their negative actions. Don't fall into the trap of thinking that, hey, I want to be like them, or perhaps I want to fight with them, get into a competition with them. Don't make that mistake. Trust in Hashem. Trust in Hashem. Let's see. The Medrash Sheicher Tov says like this: Amar LaKadosh Baruch Hu Dovid. Hashem says to King David, Im tiresh ani oiseh tov l'rishaim. If let's say you see that I'm doing something good for the wicked, it looks like they're getting the benefit without doing what's right. They're getting the benefits. It seems like they're having siyata d'shmaya. They're having divine assistance. Al yera b'libcha. Let it not be bad or terrible in your eyes, in your heart. El taiseh v'asei tov. Continue to do what's right. To continue to do good. Tshuva. Do tshuva. Come back to me. Do my will. Shenemar kol tisa avin v'kach tov. As the passuk says in Isaiah, lift off the sin from yourselves and take upon yourself to do good. Uma imarishayim shemachisin I see. Says the Medrash, a powerful thing. Look, if when it comes to those who are wicked, who anger me, they're not doing me any favors, asisi ima em taiva. I did them a favor. It seems like they're successful. Imcha shata b'teach bi. You trust in me. And you are involved in learning Torah. You're doing what's right. Be certainly you should trust me. If they're getting away with it, so to speak, and I'm doing kindness for them, don't look at it in a negative way and think, oh, why are they getting kindness? Why am I not? Don't worry. If they're getting kindness, certainly you will receive great kindness. You need not worry. That's why the passuk says, trust in Hashem and do good. Right? If you are somebody who trusts in Hashem and you are doing good, you can trust. You can know it's going to be good. That's the end of the passuk. That's the end of the passuk. You're going to dwell in the land. Shchon eretz means you're going to be, everything's going to be good. You're going to be re'eh emunah. You're going to be like a shepherd of faith. Dovid Hamelech. Says the Medrash, what was King David like? He was like a worker who was working for a king his whole life. He hadn't gotten paid. And he was worried, what if I never get paid? Maybe I'll never get paid. Then what happened was that this same king hired another worker, and this worker only worked for one day. And the worker who worked for one day got paid, he got drink, he got food. So that worker who was working his whole life for the king says to himself, if this person who only served Hashem, so to speak, for one day, or in this case the king, who only served the king for one day, got paid, was fed, got everything good, I, who have been serving Hashem my entire life, I who have been serving the King my entire life, will certainly receive my due reward. That worker left, and the worker who had been working his entire life, he began to be very joyous in his heart. He was no longer worried about not getting paid. This is what King David says in Psalm chapter 4, verse 8. King David says, when I saw that my enemies, those who were evil, those who were wicked, they collected tons and tons. They brought in their crops, they had success. That gave me joy in my heart. Why? Because I know that if the wicked are getting paid for the little good that they do, certainly I'm going to get paid for the great amount of good that I do. When am I joyous in my heart? When I see what you did for the wicked, that they had a tremendous amount of sustenance. That brings two lines from the Medrash Tanchuma. Passuk says, our passuk, trust in Hashem and do good, dwell in the land, and be a shepherd of faith. Rabbi Chaggai b'shem Rabbi Yitzchak HaMesaris Krava Omar Hachi Asei Toiv B'tach B'Hashem. Rabbi Chaggai said, switch around the passuk. The passuk says, trust in Hashem and do good. Rabbi Chaggai says, do good and trust in Hashem. So this sounds like the topic that we've discussed previously, where, of course, we know Rasha B'tach B'Hashem, even someone who's wicked and trusts in Hashem, their Bitachon works, but it's better to be someone who has a real relationship with Hashem, not just when the going gets tough, but I'm always trying to do Hashem's will. That's the ideal. Now he brings from the Chassid, the Yavitz, Ach Bitach B'Hashem, trust in Hashem, Shabara El Mazeh, Al Derech HaChesed HaGomer. Hashem created this world with absolute kindness. Hashem created the world with kindness, and He's for sure going to pay you. He's going to give you your just reward for your actions. And don't weaken from your service of God and from doing what's right. Stand strong and strengthen yourself in your simple service of God, your uprightness. Right? The passuk says earlier, don't be jealous of those who do wicked deeds. Corresponding to that, it says, dwell in the land. What this means to say is like this. Everything that Hashem made in the world was made in order to serve Hashem. Right? You see these beautiful hills behind me, the beautiful trees blossoming and blooming. All this was made to have a beautiful background for our Torah learning together. If you have accomplished this, if you have the merit, the great joy, the great ashrecha, unbelievable osher, the prosperity to have connected to the will of Hashem, to be using your existence in order to serve God, I don't need to be jealous of those who are wicked and maybe have like a nicer house than me, or maybe have a nicer car than me, or maybe have more money than me. It's not relevant. Shutafel. What they have is just secondary. It reminds me of the story my Rosh Hashiva tells my parents, Zayin Gezuni should be healthy and well, that when he was a young rabbi living in Brooklyn, so one of his congregants, one of his one of the people who was being Makariv came to visit him, and they came into this little apartment. He was a very wealthy man, came into Rabbi Per's apartment, and he said to him, "You were living the life." The wealthy man saw that they just had a wholesome spiritual life, even though they didn't have a huge home. They didn't have a lot of luxury, but they had a good life. It was obvious even to the wealthy man who had it all. Says the Yavitz, if you have a heart, if you have a bit of imagination, you can think about it. It's like two people that they went to purchase merchandise. One guy was walking along, and he was walking. He didn't have any other means of transportation. He didn't have a car. In the mashal, he didn't have a horse. And as he was going, so he had some kind of needs. He was on his way, and he was able to take care of his needs. Whatever he needed, he stopped. He wasn't in such a rush. He stopped by a pit stop, bought himself some food, got what he needed. The second guy was on his way to get the merchandise, and he rode on a horse. He was so joyous, he was singing, and he got there quickly. But he didn't get anything. He was on his way, he didn't stop at any pit stops, he didn't really take care of his needs. And he didn't purchase any merchandise in the end. And he came back empty-handed. On his way back, he had to sell his horse in order to be able to eat anything on the way back. When he got home, the guy who rode on the horse with songs and joy, he didn't have anything to show for it. He lost his horse. The Abbot says, we could say that that's an understanding of the passuk, that the Torah is telling us. You might see a guy's riding on the horse, but in the end he loses the horse, right? Can't take it with you to the grave, like the passuk tells us. Your honor, your money doesn't follow you, right? But what happened to the guy who didn't have the horse, who didn't have the fancy car? He was just, for today, we could call the analogy, we're driving along in an old jalopy, which breaks down every 3 feet. But the guy who was walking along, as he's walking along, he got everything that he needed. He never lacked for anything. The guy who is rich, he was rushing along through life, and in the end he loses his wealth. In the end, he doesn't come home with anything. Right? So that's the mashal Yavis gives us. And that's the pshat. Shechan eretz, re'eh emunah. Dwell in the land. Live simply. Live simply. Be a shepherd of faith. Live with your faith. Know that you're doing what's right. You don't have to be so rich. You don't have to be so wealthy. You don't have to have all of the foolish things that life offers, but in the end, takes it right back. Rashi says, Betach Hashem, trust in Hashem, Al-Tamirem le'egzel ve'egnoiv, Oyetin la'ani l'tzedakah. I mean, this person could say, look, if I don't steal, I don't have any way to make money. If I don't steal, if I don't cheat, if I give tzedakah, if I give charity to people, how am I going to feed myself, feed my family? How will I have my livelihood? Don't say this, but rather be a shepherd of faith. If you have faith in Hashem, you will be able to eat. You will have your livelihood from the reward for your very faith. That you trusted in Hashem, and you knew that you could rely on Him, and you could do good. In other words, we'll see this more This passuk we're going to spend 2 weeks on, but we'll see this more as we continue. But Rashi is telling us that I don't have to be worried when I do a mitzvah. How am I going to do this mitzvah? How am I going to be honest in my business? How am I going to give charity? I don't have the money. How am I going to have the money? Don't worry about it. Have emunah. Have bitachon. Trust in Hashem. If you do what's right, it's going to work out. It's going to be good for you. The Ramban says as follows: Hikdim lahazer ala bitachon tchila, v'achar kach ala ma'aseh hatoif. First, the passuk tells us about bitachon, having faith, and then it tells us about doing good. This is another aspect of it. Besides having bitachon, like Rashi said, that I can do what's right because it will work out in the end. Have bitachon in regards to your mitzvahs. Have bitachon that Hashem will help you to complete the commandments that you want to fulfill. Al Kain Amar, B'tchila, B'tach Hashem, Kol She'azor Yismach Yismach Lasis Chetzam Yidaisov. Have bitachon, B'tach Hashem v'asei toiv. Have bitachon in regards to the asei toiv, in regards to the fact that you'll be able to succeed. You want to do a mitzvah? You want to fulfill God's commandments? You want to visit the sick? You want to help someone out who needs help? You want to do a chesed, a kindness? You want to give tzedakah, charity? Trust, depend on Hashem that He's going to help you to do His will. So trust in Hashem that you're going to be able to do what's good. And then put in all of your efforts, interestingly. Put in all of your efforts in order to do what's right. If you think, oh, I don't know if I have the ability to do this, don't think about it that way. Don't worry about it. Hashem will support you and He will help you. You're not naturally talented. You're not naturally outgoing. You're not the guy or the gal who has that ability to do that mitzvah. Don't worry about it. Hashem's going to help you. You just put in yours. Hashem will do the rest. The Kana Kemach says like this: Dovid Hamelech alav Shalom bo lahazkir lahazir al midas habitachon tchila v'achar kach al ma'aseh hatoiv loidia shebitachon hazeh hu. King David, of blessed memory, he comes to mention and to exhort us in regards to the character trait of faith in Hashem first. And then he speaks about doing good. Why does he do it this way? Why does he speak about it this way, in this order? This is to inform us that the bitachon that he's talking about is trust that you can do God's commandments. Hashem will give you the wherewithal. He will give you that which is preparatory in order to do that. Same idea. Hashem will help you. You can depend on Him. Hashem will make sure that you have everything you need in order to do those good deeds. Here he brings some Mesilas Yesharim. The Mesilas Yesharim is talking about things that detract from our ability to be quick in our fulfillment of commandments. There's excuses. Why am I not running to do a mitzvah? I'm afraid. I'm afraid something will happen to me. I'm afraid it's dangerous. I'm afraid something may go wrong. Sometimes a person will be afraid of the cold or of the heat. A person is afraid that he'll be damaged. He might get sick. Sometimes it will be windy. All kinds of excuses not to be quick to do a mitzvah. This is what King Solomon says. The person who's lazy says all kinds of excuses. There's a lion, there's a leopard in the road. I'm going to get attacked. We find that our sages say that this kind of behavior is a negative behavior. It's something which is associated with sinners. In Yerushalayim, in Jerusalem, so the sinners were seized with fear. They were seized with trembling. Those who were flatterers. One of the sages of the Talmud, or the Gemara, said to his student, he said, I see that you're afraid. You must be a sinner. You must have some aveira in your hand. It says the Mesilas Yesharim, such an important thing. The fear that a person has that prevents him from doing what's right or prevents him from doing what's good is an excuse. And it creates a way of being which causes sin. And the correct approach is that which Dovid Hamelech tells us in our passuk. Trust in Hashem and do good. Dwell in the land and be a shepherd of faith. A person just needs to trust in Hashem, have faith, have confidence, and know I don't need to be afraid of anything. Only I need to be afraid of Hashem. I don't need to be afraid of any other thing, and I can go ahead with courage to do that which is right. Thanks so much for listening. See you again next time.